Now it's time to look at one of the biggest pillars of internet marketing of all, SEO. SEO is search engine optimization, and this basically means that you're trying to get your website to show up in the search results. Of course, you're not going to be able to show up high in every search result, so this is where keywords and targeting come in. A keyword is essentially a word or phrase that people are going to search in order to find your site. When people go shopping online, they'll almost always start with Google. And when they start with Google, they will begin by searching for the thing that they want. Very often, this will mean that they search for something like buy hats online. If you can target that precise phrase so that your page is the top result, you will not only be able to reach the right demographic, but you'll be able to target them at the precise moment they're actually planning on buying something. The same thing happens when someone looks for information. They might search for how to lose weight after Christmas, or they might search for fitness articles. Again, you can bring more people to your site, and that way hopefully create more loyal followers simply by making sure your pages come up as top results for those terms. So SEO has the huge advantage of being highly targeted and allowing you to reach anyone rather than just people who are your followers or who are part of the same network as your followers. The only problem is that SEO is also arguably more complicated than the other forms of marketing we've looked at so far. It's never guaranteed. That is to say, you can spend years doing SEO or pay the very biggest SEO service in the world and still not see any improvements. Let's take a look at why that is and how to give yourself the best chance of success. In order to get to the top of Google, the aim is to try and understand how Google works, how Google decides which sites are worthwhile, and how you can manipulate those factors in order to move your site to the top. Google works using spiders or robots. These are small programs that search the web by following from one link to the next. Each time they find a new website, they add it to a giant index and will assess the subject matter and the quality of the site by looking at who is linking to the page, how the page is laid out, and what the subject of the content appears to be. If we knew precisely how Google's algorithm worked, then we could get to the top of the search results with guaranteed certainty. As we don't know this though, all we can do is make educated guesses and hope that these get us to the top of Google. When Google first became the dominant search engine, the algorithm was fairly straightforward and was generally quite well understood by marketers. Back then we knew that Google found sites by following links on sites already in the index. Google thought of a link as testimony. The more people link into your site, the better your site must be. Google attempted to match search terms with the content on your pages. If you repeated the same phrase often enough, you stood a better chance of ranking for that term. Back then, it was easy enough to manipulate Google into doing your bidding. All you had to do was to create a website with lots and lots of content, repeat the same keywords over and over again, and get lots of other sites to link to you. It was literally a matter of whoever worked the fastest could get to the top of Google the quickest. Unfortunately, though, this also led to some very bad practices. People would stuff keywords into their text, repeating the same few phrases over and over again. People would pay for links. People would steal content and spin it, swap words for synonyms, and generally Google's results started to become dominated by spam. So Google clamped down and introduced some smarter rules and algorithms. These updates to its system were known as Penguin and Panda and really shook up the internet marketing community. Now Google is much smarter when it comes to looking for content and now values quality over quantity to a large degree. A few examples of the changes. First off, Google will now penalize websites for keyword stuffing. A density of 1 to 2% is generally recommended. Google now prefers long-form content and will reward it. Google will penalize sites that associate with spam sites. Low-quality links are worthless. Links from established authorities mean much more. A single link from Harvard is worth 1,000,000 links from spam sites. Google now understands synonyms and related terms and will look for you to have written around a subject. Google penalizes links that are from sites that aren't related to yours. Google clamps down hard on paid links. Google clamps down hard on stolen or reworked content. Google can now monitor how long people spend on a website or page. If your visitors are only staying for a second before leaving, Google will take this to mean that your site doesn't offer any real value and you will be penalized. This sudden change resulted in a lot of sites being removed from Google altogether, which badly hurt many businesses. As you can imagine, this caused quite a lot of outcry. But what's important to remember is that website owners are not the customers Google is catering to. Google is catering to users who want to use Google in order to find high-quality content. Thus, Google's main and only objective is to ensure that the content it shares is relevant and interesting to the people searching for it. So, what's the best way to handle good SEO? Simple. Make sure you are providing great, relevant content. When you do this, you are aligning yourself with Google's goals. Therefore, every change Google makes will ultimately help more people to find your site. Meanwhile, the sites that try to spam Google or trick it will only be damaged each time that Google has an update. So, with all that said, how do you go about carrying out SEO for your site in this day and age? We'll cover that in part 2. With what we covered in the last video, you may be wondering whether it really is possible to get your site ranked now. How do you go about carrying out SEO for your site in this day and age? Well, let's take a look at some modern SEO practices. The first thing to do is to fill your site with as much relevant content as possible. Notice how SEO and content marketing naturally go hand in hand already? Again, this content should be long form, at least occasionally, and should contain links to other sites. Again, the same things that make your content high quality for your readers are the things that Google wants to see. Do some keyword research to find what people are searching for and what you should try to target to get the ideal traffic to your site. You can find the volume of people searching for specific terms by using Google's keyword planner. Come here to adwords.google.com/keyword planner and then sign in using your Google ID. It's all very straightforward. Try to make sure that the terms you search for aren't too competitive, however. Otherwise, you can end up going against too many other sites and giving yourself an impossible task. As mentioned earlier, Google just doesn't like you to keep repeating the same key phrase over and over. Instead, the objective is to lace it into the content a few times as naturally as possible, while also including synonyms and related terminology. This should happen naturally and it should never distract the reader. From here, you can go about building links from high-quality, relevant sites. These are certain sites that Google already trusts, and you can spot these by looking at which ones are already at the top of Google and which ones are featured in Google News. Google also likes big recognized brands, and it likes .edu and .org domains. While it might be hard to get links from those sites, you can think of this a bit like degrees of separation. In other words, if you can't get a link from Harvard University, look for a site that does have a link from Harvard and see if you can't get a link from them. One of the best strategies you can use to build links is something called guest posting. Here, you're essentially going to contact big blogs and offer to write content for them for free. This content needs to be relevant and high quality, so they will be tempted to go ahead and publish it. Rather than charging for your writing, what you then do is make it part of the deal that you will get a link back to your website within the body of the text. One way to avoid going head to head with the biggest players in your niche is to focus on local SEO. Local SEO is simply SEO that places local keywords front and center. So if you live in Santa Monica and you run a hairdresser, then you would try to rank for Santa Monica hairdresser, and you would build links from other local companies. It's much easier to become number one for a specific search term like this. Even if you're running an international business, it can be a good idea to start local and then branch out once you've built a local momentum. Lastly, a few things that can help to keep you in Google's good books. Avoid anything that looks spammy or manipulative. Try to avoid patterns and encourage your visitors to share your links online. That's what Google really likes to see, sites with lots of links on the strength of their quality. One way to do this is to write link bait. This is content that is so useful, so interesting, or so shocking that other people want to link to it and include it in their debates or share it with friends. When creating your links, avoid trying to use only your keywords in the anchor text. Sometimes the best anchor is just click here or this article. Again, it looks more organic and natural and means Google won't think that you're paying for your links. Now, don't try and trick Google. Just create high quality content for your readers while keeping Google's algorithms in the back of your mind.